Hey everybody, welcome to the Powersports Podcast and our first ever Facebook Live experiment. We are recording the podcast and streaming live. I'm Jason Baffrey, and this is my cohort in crime, Eric Colvin of Colvin Motorcycle Company. And it's Monday, and it's in the morning, and this is probably the worst time we could possibly do a motorcycle and powersports podcast, but nevertheless, here we are because we both had time to do it this morning.
Well, if you're going to hang out and look for a reason to not do your data input in the office and hide your cubby,
that's right.
This is the way to do it.
Yeah, so we hope that you have pulled up the stream and that you're watching us live, and if your boss is roaming around, then you can have another window open that you can switch over to real quick, and then put your earphones in so you can listen to us and hear all about the latest and greatest in motorcycles and the power sports industry and all the cool things that we talk about. If you're looking for the podcast, you can find us at oklahomatalking.co. That's Oklahoma Talking Company. You can also listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher Radio are the places that you can find the podcast. And then we're going to see how this Facebook Live thing works. We haven't done this before. We know it's very popular, and if you guys like it and support it and like the video aspect of what we're doing, then we'll try to do more of these. And we're doing it live from the Oklahoma Talking Company studios this morning, but we'll try to do some shows out at some shops that we're going to go to and some events that we're going to go to, and we'll do little bits and pieces from time to time at some of our test rides and some of our racing season once the VDTRA season kicks off and Eric gets to racing, and our good friend Jake Latimer and some of the other guys that we hang out with, and you'll be able to see them live and talk to them. And
so footage of you on some testing tunes again?
Yeah, maybe so.
Maybe a YouTube moment there?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have plenty of YouTube moments. So let's get into it now that we've kind of introduced what we're doing here today. And what do you want to talk about first? We've got a lot of flat track news has come out recently from the American Flat Track Series. Of course, you know that the Indian team is established that are going to be on the FTR 750s. And we're looking for Jared Mees, Brian Smith, and Brad Baker to be heading up the Indian racing team in the American Flat Track Racing Series. But just over the weekend, Harley-Davidson announced its brand new team for flat track for the 2017 season, and a lot of interesting things about that announcement. First of all of the riders are going to be on the new XG 750. And for those of you that may not be familiar with the transition from the XR 750 to the XG 750, Eric, what are we looking at there?
Well, we're looking at more of a production-based motorcycle now with the FG over the XR.
Yeah. How so?
Well, it's a street. If you go to your Harley-Davidson dealer, you can actually buy the production-based engine that they're using. It's an actual street bike motor with a lot of heavy modifications. Obviously, it's in a dirt track chassis. It's set up for dirt track.
Right. And probably the biggest thing about that is it being the water-cooled engine, which is a new development for Harley.
Anybody that's into Harley-Davidson knows that water cooling for Harley-Davidson is very alien, or has been in the past.
Yeah, well, obviously they're stepping into their future now with this. When they came out with the Street 750, it had that motor in it. It was water-cooled. They're starting to play with some water cooling elements and some of the other the new motors with the Milwaukee 8. There's some water. We talked about the oil pump and everything on that motor.
Water cooled cylinder heads.
Yeah.
But the V rod being water cooled also.
Right, and so it's for a race configuration. This is brand new. That bike was tested in the 2016 season with the young Davis Fisher at the controls, who was the 2015 GNC 2 champion. He moved up to GNC 1. Harley hired him to ride and test the XG 750 as their regular Harley team was still on the XRs and being very competitive there. But Davis, I think, did a great job riding the XG 750, got it into some main events in 2016, did a fabulous job. And so the interesting thing about the weekend's announcement is they announced their new team. Their new team is made up of Kenny Coolbeth Jr., Jake Johnson, and Brandon Robinson. So interesting in that it's a three-man team to combat the Indian three-man team of Mees, Smith, and Baker. But also the part that I found interesting is that Davis Fisher's name was nowhere to be found in the press release or the announcement. So for a guy, a young guy, a great up-and-coming rider, he got that bike into some mains in 2016. I think, based on what I was seeing, did a great job for the Harley-Davidson factory team. And then where is
he now?
What happened? I looked on his Facebook page. There's nothing there. At least as far as the Davis Fisher Racing Facebook page. But so that brings to mind. I mean, what could a guy like that be doing now that factory Harley wouldn't bring him along since he tested that bike all year?
It seems a little odd, but I'm of the opinion, like what you'd brought up, where Terry Vance was at a lot of the events. And
Terry Vance of Vance and Hines. Vance and Hines, a long-time racing team, and of course aftermarket manufacturer. If you're a fan of NHRA drag racing, you know that the Vance and Hines team has won multiple championships in pro stock motorcycle, and they were helping with the development of the factory Harley XG 750.
Right. And
they were very involved at a lot of the races last year. Terry Vance, the Vance in Vance and Hines, was at several of the events, as was former NHRA Pro Stock Motorcycle champion Matt Hines, who's kind of moved into a more behind-the-scenes tuning role in both his brother's Pro Stock Motorcycle and was helping out with Davis Fisher's efforts in dirt track last year.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that this might be an opportunity for Vance and Hines to get on board and maybe have a team this year.
Yeah, and that's completely speculation on our part. If we start some rumors, then be sure you attribute those to the Powersports Podcast.
That's
maybe
right.
People
Let's stir the pot.
will come to our Facebook page and come check out the podcast. But yeah, I mean, of all the things that we could think of, that why would such a good young rider not be retained by the factory team for this effort when he had helped so much in testing the bike, developing the bike, and really had some good performances last year? Why would he not be included with the team? Well, let's just speculate that Vance and Hines, who's obviously very involved in NHRA drag racing, they've been and are still involved in road racing. Maybe they kind of got the bug with the flat track racing. They see the forward motion that American Flat Track is making with the new rules packages, the new teams, and maybe they were like, hey, let's get into this. And so possibly we could see a Vance and Hines American Flat Track team with Davis Fisher.
I think the more the merrier. I'd like to see that for sure.
Yeah, so again, complete speculation on our part, but I guess if we had our wishful thinking, that would be what we'd like to see. I mean, because I think Davis Fisher is a great rider. He's a great young representative for the sport.
Yeah.
Former GNC2 champion, as I mentioned. So he's not a guy that you're going to see just put on the sidelines, I don't think. So I think he deserves and has probably earned a high-profile team, and a pairing with Vance and Hines would be really cool to see, and to see them come out and compete against the factory Harley team and the factory Indian team and some of the other great teams that we're seeing rise up here for 2017.
Satellite team would be really good.
Yeah, so we'll keep our eyes open for that. And, of course, the American Flat Track season gets started in March at Daytona, the all-new Daytona TT, which will be taking place.
Which is new and wild, isn't it?
It will be. It'll be exciting to see the flat track bikes inside the Daytona International Speedway Stadium and running a TT, and to see the V-twins on a TT course. And it'll be the first time that we've seen that in a lot of years.
A lot of decades, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun, and it'll be really cool to see what this new factory team for Harley and the new factory Indian team, and to see those bikes doing some jumps and getting kind of crazy. It'll be interesting.
If anybody ever thinks that dirt track is easy, try and jump your street bike.
Yeah, that's a lot of weight to put in the air compared to a motocross bike or a DTX bike.
Yeah, and it won't be doing like doubles and triples, obviously, but nonetheless, to get the motorcycle off the ground 4 feet, 5 feet like that,
Yeah.
and at those speeds it's a handful.
Yeah, I can imagine. Staying with the flat track theme just a little bit, we won't get too far into this because we want to have Jake Latimer, the promoter of the Vintage Dirt Track Racing Association, in here very soon for a show to talk more in depth about what they're doing for 2017. But they have released their schedule, and it's an impressive schedule. And the VDTRA will be running around Oklahoma and Texas, and will also be at Sturgis, South Dakota, in 2017, which should be a great event. But I want to bring it up because they're going to have their first event, kind of a test and tune event, February 25th, if I can grab my paper here. And that's going to be at Cotton Bowl Speedway in Page, Texas, which is a 3/8 mile track. And so the Vintage Dirt Track Association and the Grand Prix Hot Shoe Series, which is for the more modern bikes, they'll be running the combined schedule in 2017, and so we look forward to getting that going and being involved there. But if you've got a bike and you want to get out and you want to do some testing and get ready for the season, February 25th at Cotton Bowl Speedway in Page, Texas, and then the first points race, no, that's going to be an exhibition race, but the first kind of official race will be back at Cotton Bowl Speedway on March 25th, and should be a lot of fun.
I'm
you
looking
ready?
forward to it. Well, we're ready for testing too. We've got some new equipment we want to go ride and we want to go test, and we're taking a new approach this year. We've had a lot of motorcycles in the past that we've built and have developed a small amount and had a very small amount of run time and race time with them. So this year, I think what we want to do is to take this equipment that we've worked with and race it some more. And we've got, the problem that we have is more equipment than me, the rider, or ways to haul it. So we're looking forward to the testing tune.
Yeah, if only you knew somebody who was willing to ride and had a truck.
Well, this is true. So like I said, maybe some YouTube moments here are coming.
Absolutely. Now, one of the interesting things, you made an announcement the other day on your Facebook page, the Colvin Motorcycles page. You have developed and been developing a new flat track motorcycle for kids, to get kids more involved in flat track racing. And it's really cool. And these aren't just DTX bikes. I mean, these are kind of a full-blown dirt trackers scaled down for kids to get involved.
They're a mini framer. We offer both. We offer a DTX version, and then we offer, if you go to our Facebook page and check it out, our Powersports Podcast page, I believe it's posted there, you can see our mini racers. We worked with Grand Prix Speedworks and Cannon Racecraft, and we've developed suspension pieces for the kids, and we've developed miniature versions of some bodywork. So we have, if anybody's familiar with any of the dirt track bodywork, we have some miniature champion frame bodywork. We have some miniature XR 750 looking bodywork. And then we also have some bodywork that is taken from some of the Night and the Race Tech bodywork. So we can do that from 50 cc's up to the 250 cc motorcycles. And one of the ideas that we've come up with these mini racers is sort of a cup series that would be all 4-stroke classes. So it would be a development beginner class, possibly limited engine modifications to keep it simple and inexpensive for the parents.
Yeah, and so this will be part of the Grand Prix Hot Shoe Series?
That is our intention, is to develop it into that, yes.
And so what, you said 4-stroke engines, but will we, I guess any brand would be available for that?
Pretty much any brand. We thought about possibly trying to keep it simple and keep it basic, that there are still a lot of the air-cooled engines that are being manufactured, even by Honda and Yamaha. So it could be any of the import engines out of Taiwan, Korea. Could even be the ones out of China. There are a lot of performance modifications, and our dyno testing has revealed that across the board that the reliability and the power is pretty close. Mm-hmm. We've looked at the vertical engines and the horizontal engines, possibly segregating the two, where you would have a class 4 cc sizes for the horizontal engines and then cc classes for the vertical engines.
Okay, for the new listener or watcher, viewer today, explain the difference between the horizontal engine and the vertical engine.
Okay, the horizontal engine is more along the lines, if anybody remembers the little lay-down Honda type motors.
Okay.
Those are widely used, and copies of those are widely used in industry. Very easy and inexpensive to get a hold of them. If anybody has ever had any of those engines, they know that they're really reliable and are very durable. Even a lot of the import engines out of the Pacific Rim are still very durable and easy to get parts for. Vertical engines are more along the lines of the upright engine, and if anybody's ridden XR80s, XR75s, TTRs, CRF 150s, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I grew up on an XR80.
I think all of us had started out with a lay-down Honda Mini Trail of some kind.
Yeah, I had a Trail 50.
Yeah, and I had a Mini Trail 50, and after that, in that day and time, it was XR75s, and then along came the XR80, and then the XR100, and
yeah, I had wanted. Well, a friend of mine got an XR75, and then they came out with the XR80s, and so I got one of those in 80.
In 1980.
In 1980, yeah. So that was great, and then moved up to an XR200 from there. So
we still had dinosaurs in the 80s.
Exactly. All right, let's move on from flat track talk to a little bit of AMA Monster Energy Supercross. If you are a Supercross fan, then of course you probably know a lot of what's been going on, but it has been a wild couple of weeks in Monster Energy Supercross, and we didn't get a show out last week, so we want to talk a little bit about the Anaheim 2 event. And of course the big thing that came out of that was a horrendous crash from Team Honda HRC's Ken Roczen, who in the main event, Ryan Dungey kind of got out, got a whole shot for the first time of the season, and Roczen got not a bad start, but he had been right at the front in all previous three races, and so he was back about fifth, I think, and trying to make up ground on Ryan Dungey, and was working through the pack, and he was headed into a triple and came up the face of a jump. The track had been getting really rutted due to a lot of moisture. They'd had a lot of rain in California that previous week. They'd done a great job in prepping the track, but it was getting some pretty good ruts, especially on the faces of the jumps. And I don't know exactly what happened. I've watched it several times, but it's like the suspension unloaded as he was coming up the face of the jump, and he just got launched straight up into the air over the bike and landed on the face of the next jump with his kind of on his shoulder and his arm. And so as a result of that, he had a compound fracture of his arm, broke his wrist and his elbow, I believe. And if you follow Ken Roczen on Instagram, you've probably seen some of his updates. He's been keeping everybody fully aware of everything that's going on, to the extent of posting his x-rays and even a shot of his arms as they were cut open for them to be doing the work on. Terrible wreck, and you hate to see that happen to anybody. And, with what was expected for the season and the performance that Ken Roczen had in the first three events, and, the battle that was looming with Roczen and Dungey for the points championship, you just hate to see that happen to anybody. But to see that, and for Team Honda, who have so much invested in the brand new bike and Ken Roczen for the 2017 season, it's just a shame.
And that early in the season also, to have that kind of injury.
Yeah, and it was certainly nothing that, I don't think it was anything that he did wrong. It wasn't a riding error. It was just one of those fluke type of things, and just the way that the track was. And like I said, it just looked like the chassis unloaded on him as he was, or maybe he was positioned slightly wrong for the jump. I'm not sure, but like I said, he was launched. So that put a huge spin on the points battle for 2017. Dungey went on to win that race, and then was followed by Marvin Musquin, who had finished on the podium at the previous three races as well. Of course, Musquin is Dungey's teammate. The other guy that has been doing really well was Jason Anderson. He had an incident with Vince Friese where there was an altercation after the heat race, and Anderson was ejected. And you know, it's one of those things. He let his emotions get away from him, and it cost him big time because he dropped in the points because he wasn't allowed to. Well, he was going to end up riding the semi, and they shut him down before that. They wouldn't let him ride the semi, and basically disqualified him for the evening. So he lost all the points from that night, and fell way back in the point series where he had been like fourth, and then had to try to come back this last weekend where they were in Phoenix. And so they came into Phoenix, and the big thought was Dungey's going to just run away with it from here. And to everybody's surprise, that is not what happened in Phoenix. And some of the best racing that we have seen so far in 2017 took place in Phoenix as Eli Tomac bounces back. He had been having a horrendous season, and everybody was like, what in the world is going on with Team Kawasaki and Eli Tomac? I mean, they've got a lot invested here. This is their guy. We know that he is capable of riding and winning races, but he was just not looking good all season. But they found the magic, and Tomac ran away with it, finished like 18 seconds in front of everybody else to win the main event in Phoenix. And then Dungey got on the podium, finished third, and who would, in their wildest minds, would have believed who the second place guy would be? But Chad Reed, the old man, can I say that even? I mean, Chad Reed's 34. He's the old man in Supercross now, and it just keeps coming back. And, I mean, I was laying in bed watching the races because, they're on West Coast time, and it's late for us old guys. And so I actually leaped up in bed when Reed got into second place in that main event. It was so exciting. And that crowd, the Phoenix crowd, was insane for Chad Reed. And, I mean, he was in the semi, and when he started working his way through traffic in the semi and got up to finish second in the semi, you could hear the crowd just going absolutely nuts. And they did the same thing in the main event. And it was just really cool to see. I mean, you see a guy like that has worked so hard, is still out there working hard at the age where, most Supercross riders are retired long before 34. We've only seen a couple of guys make it to that age. I mean, I think back to John Dowd, who did really well at 34, but he was still riding the lower class at that time. Even he went back to 125s back in the two strokes. But for Chad Reed to still be out there, be mixing it up, I mean, he's a guy that has owned his own team, did that successfully for a couple of years, and then closed up shop, was able to put the deal together with the factory Yamaha team and kind of go back to his roots, and then to come out and get on the podium at 34 years old and now put himself in, he could potentially be in the points battle. I mean, I don't know that he's going to be able to pull off a championship, but I mean, he can certainly finish in the top 5 if he keeps riding like he was riding on Saturday night, because he looked good. He was fast. He was blasting the whoop section.
Yeah, it's all going to come down to staying healthy.
Yeah, Well, and you look at Roxon. I mean, that's kind of the goal for everybody. And you can't be out there and ride conservative. And for Dungey, he's got that mix figured out. He can ride on the ragged edge almost, ride really, really fast, faster than almost everybody else. But he still seems in control, and he doesn't seem to push it to the point to where he's going to get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. He's a very smart rider, and if you've watched him, if you're a fan of his, watched him in the past, he's very methodical in the way that he approaches not only each individual race, but each individual season. So, he's a little bit on what's considered on the old side, which is, like you said, amazing that somebody in their mid-30s would be considered old. But I like watching a lot of the veterans finish well, and he's still capable of championship wins. Like you said, I don't know if he can necessarily put together a championship series as far as that goes, but seeing him on the podium, it's really good racing right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the 250 category, we've seen some great battles. Shane McElrath on the Troy Lee Designs KTM won the first 2 races, and then Justin Hill on the Pro Circuits Kawasaki has come out and won the last 2 races, Anaheim 2 and Phoenix, and it was really cool. There was a great battle. McElrath had some problems in the heat race on Saturday night. It's the first time he's really faced any kind of troubles. I guess he went down, and then he had to go through the last chance qualifier. Won the last chance qualifier, got into the main, had a bad gate pick, but got out front early, and then he and Hill ended up battling, and it was just a great side by side. I mean, everybody working hard, but clean. I mean, they raced clean and just put on a great race for everybody. Hill ended up getting the better of that. They were in traffic, and Hill was able to get around McElrath and hold on for the win, but not by too much. And what was really cool about that for me was to see those two guys after the race. I mean, they were hugging each other, high-fiving, and so much respect even in the post-race interviews, respect for each other, a lot of friendship there. Of course, they were on the same team. Hill had been on Troy Lee Design's team in 2016, and so those guys obviously developed a relationship. But, so many times, I mean, you think of some of the great rivalries, and there gets to be some emotions involved, and you think about the Anderson-Freese situation, and going back to last year, the Pike-Freese situation, and things like that, and we see that. But for the most part, it seems like everybody gets along pretty well, has a lot of respect for each other. But to see Hill and McElrath, the way they acted after the event with such a close race, battling for the points, they're within 4 points of each other now in the championship battle. In the 250 West Series, it was just really cool to see. You just don't see that, especially in this day and age, that kind of sportsmanship and, hey, we battled out hard and, I wanted to kill you on the track, kind of, except not enough to hit you, and let's hug it out afterwards. And I don't know. I just think that's a great thing about the sport.
Yeah, a lot of the old sportsmanship has kind of died in this day and age, and it's really good to see guys that race really close like that and acknowledge their respect for each other.
Yeah. Some other racing that took place over the weekend, of course, was the 24 Hours of Daytona, the Rolex 24. And did you get a chance to watch it?
I did not get a chance to watch that.
All right, so that's all we have to say about that. No. The Cadillac team won the Premier class, and Jeff Gordon was one of the team members on that, so he becomes one of a very short list of drivers to have won both the Daytona 500 and the Rolex 24, and it's got to be great. It's obviously great for him and a cool win for Cadillac. The other big win in that race was the GT Le Mans category, where the Ford GT beat out the Ferraris and took the win there with the brand new 6-cylinder GT, Ford GT. So
that's back to the Ford-Ferrari rivalry of old, isn't
yeah, it really is. And there's a great new movie, which I haven't had a chance to watch yet, but it's called The 24-Hour War, which is about that, I think, 1966, 1967, the Ford GT40 versus the Ferrari in those 24-hour races. And Adam Carolla actually produced that movie, and so I'm sure it's really good. So if you get a chance to check that out, it should be a lot of fun. But so we're kind of back to that here in 2017 as we have the Ferraris and the Ford GT making its return, and Ford took the win again, which is pretty cool, being a Ford fan that I am.
You being a Ford fan, actually the GT is about the only Ford that I've had any kind of interest in. But Ford, for the most part, has come out swinging. They've done a lot of homework. They've done a lot of development with that car. They've put a huge amount of testing, more testing than a lot of other teams with their approach towards that racing program, and it shows because that car is very dominant when it goes to the races.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting if you're into the road racing to see how that rivalry goes throughout the 2017 season. We'll see 24 Hour of Le Mans coming up, and all those other kind of classic premier road racing events throughout the year.
I'm anxious to see how a lot of the other car manufacturers sort of catch back up. I don't know if it's just a hiccup and they're developing a lot of stuff right now, and it just hasn't progressed, and Ford has got the edge on their development. But across the board, though, anybody that keeps up with Ford Motorsports has noticed that Ford is kind of across the board has got a lot of advantages this year. They've gone back to the drawing board, I assume, and have made a lot of changes and a lot of positive improvements with a lot of their racing programs, and so Ford is on this year.
Yeah, should be a fun season. Okay, we have some kind of motorcycle power sports industry news to get to. The first thing I want to touch on, and we touched on it on our previous show, but I want to touch on it again, especially since we're here on Facebook Live today. And today is the last day to kind of get the opinion in. But there is a proposal by the United States Trade Representative. And this all has to do with the beef industry, which is interesting. And you're probably asking yourself, why are they talking about beef on the Powersports Podcast? And normally we wouldn't, but today we kind of have to, because the European Union has a ban on a lot of the things that are put into United States beef, which means that we are unable to export certain beef, a lot of beef, to Europe. In order to kind of defer that or combat that, the United States Trade Representative has a plan to put a 100% tariff on small bore, small displacement, European manufactured motorcycles. So that means if you're looking for a KTM dirt bike or a Husqvarna dirt bike, or
A Sherco,
Gas,
Beta.
Beta, and maybe even some of the, and I think this would affect even the scooters as well, would it not? So like the Vespa, and then I think about Norton's not currently importing or exporting to the United States, but BMW, Triumph, are all going to be affected by this. So essentially, if you're looking for one of any of those motorcycles, you would be paying twice as much as it is currently marked if this tariff goes through. It is a bad situation for the power sports industry, for motorcyclists, and so the AMA has come out in against this, and they have lots of information and lots of they have a letter and ways to kind of submit your opposition
on this tariff.
Yeah, support your opposition to this tariff. You can go to the AMA website and get everything. Today is the last day to do that, and if you're listening to the podcast, then we're recording this on January 30th. If you're on Facebook Live, go over to the AMA website right now and voice your opinion, because this will be a bad deal for motorcycling. And especially if you're thinking about getting a new Husqvarna or KTM or Triumph or Gas or Sherco
or a Beta,
you don't want this to happen, because you don't want to pay double the price for the motorcycle, and they're already not cheap.
No, not by any sense of the word. I mean, well worth the money that's invested, but this tariff is another example of politicians tagging something on to something else. You have a tariff plan of some kind, and this is another attempt at special interest groups, to pick on a soft target, which is a power sports industry.
Yeah, and you have the beef industry is really trying to push this through, because obviously they want to get their beef out to Europe, and obviously do not care one single bit about what happens to the motorcycling industry. So not only does it affect your pocketbook if you're looking for a new motorcycle, but you think about all of the dealerships that exist for these particular brands. You think about the aftermarket parts companies that support these brands. Everybody is going to be affected if this deal goes through. So go to the AMA website right now, today, on January 30th. Get your opinion in before it's too late, and voice your opposition to this potential tariff.
Yes, absolutely. Go online, go to the AMA, call your local representatives, take a stand as a motorcycle rider. Don't allow the motorcycle industry and people that ride recreationally especially to be a soft target anymore.
Yeah. Now, one of the other interesting things that we found going on with the motorcycle industry is there is a I don't even know how to explain this very well, but basically it's I'm going to look at the paper here, the Digital Millennium Right Act, which they have as a DMCA. I don't understand why that is, but that's a whole other story.
Heavy on the acronyms.
Yeah, heavy on the acronyms, even though they use the wrong letters. Okay, so there's a plan that is being supported by the OEMs and a lot of politicized motorcycle organizations that support the OEMs that are basically saying that you shouldn't be able to work on your own motorcycle. And they're tagging it around the electronics on the motorcycle, saying that if you work on anything that is connected to the electronics or having to do with the electronics, that only the OEMs should be able to do that work, that you, as a motorcycle owner, or even somebody like Eric Colvin, who has a motorcycle shop, Colvin Motorcycle Company, and does work on customers' motorcycles, would not be able to work on that battles against this. But Eric, explain a little more of this, especially as a shop owner, what this could do to you potentially, and what this does for the enthusiast that likes to work on their own bike.
Well, what it would do is any do-it-yourselfer at home, that would 86 it, and it would also not allow any distributors to sell any aftermarket components that you would want to put on your motorcycle. Again, this would be when you did air cleaners, exhaust pipes, camshafts, pistons. There's a lot of different injectors that are put on motorcycles, performance injectors. In other words, it would take a lot of the aftermarket street performance market and it would be gone. It wouldn't exist anymore. As individual shops, if you came in and had some kind of electronic issue on the motorcycle, only a dealer would be able to fix that. Having said that though, as far as aftermarket electronic components, lighting, charging systems, again, ignition systems and ECUs, you would be limited to what your particular make and model would have access to through a dealer. So if you had a Honda, okay, and you wanted to have some lighting done on the Honda or exhaust done on the Honda, you would be limited to whatever Honda sold, period. So if Honda partnered with a performance company in some of the ways like that Harley-Davidson partners with some other aftermarket companies for camshafts and exhaust systems, then that would fall well within what they're talking about, but the chances of that are very, very slim. So in other words, you would have your standard motorcycle and it would stay basically a standard motorcycle, and you would have very, very limited modifications that could ever be done to this said motorcycle. It would be just as bad or worse than certain countries in Europe have, to where they have to have special permission. You have to file for special paperwork even to change the color of your motorcycle over there in some instances. So it's definitely not a step in the right direction as far as the industry goes, to expand the industry and to save jobs and to promote any kind of economy growth at all, especially within the power sports industry. This is not going to do it.
No, it's an all around bad deal, and in a country where we kind of pride ourselves, at least a lot of us do, pride ourselves on the freedoms that we have within certain respects. I mean, but being able to work on your own vehicle, I think, is something that just, for those of us that are into cars and motorcycles, I mean, it's something we wouldn't even question. And now they're making us question
whether we're able to do it or not.
The freedom of being able to work on your own vehicle, which is just crazy to me that would even be a conversation that we're having.
And another issue that comes up with this whole proposal is that they want to start with modern motorcycles as they stand right now, and guys that, including myself, that might be into vintage stuff say, well, that doesn't apply to me. Well, this is the foot in the door.
Right.
Because they're proposing not only just motorcycles, ATVs, side-by-sides, personal watercraft, but they're also talking about the automotive industry as a whole, and they're wanting to say all automobiles. Now, number one, a lot of dealers, cars or motorcycles, won't work on a vehicle that's of a certain age. They may not have dealer support for that particular make or model anymore. So in essence, what that does is it would kill a vintage market.
Yeah.
It would kill the vintage market as a whole. So this thing potentially would snowball into a huge amount of just bad after bad after bad decisions and scenarios.
Yeah, and it would also put guys like you and our friend Don Muma essentially out of business.
Yeah, it would. You doing something different now as far as that goes, man.
Yeah, and with the money that you're making as a host of the Powersports Podcast, you're not going to be able to support your.
I know, but if there's sponsors out there,
right,
give us a call.
But this is a bad deal, and I feel it's necessary to point out because there's so much political talk going on everywhere right now. But this has nothing to do with our previous or current president. No. This is all through lobbyists and legislation, and so these are things that have been in the works. And is obviously being supported by the OEM. Now, what's the reason that an OEM would want something like this in place? Well, obviously, if they're selling a motorcycle and they're the only ones that are able to sell any parts and pieces for the motorcycle, and they're the only ones that are able to work on the motorcycle, then that means much more profit for them. So it comes down to the financial situation for the OEMs and just wanting to be able to completely control the industry. Now, I mean, having a monopoly of that sort is, again, absolutely insane to me in the country that we live in. So I'm hoping that there's no chance that this goes through. But, I mean, obviously, there's serious talk about it. So there's a website called Asphalt and Rubber, asphaltandrubber.com. You can check out the full story there, or probably if you Google this or the right to... the Digital Millennium Right Act, or the right to what's the other thing that I'm looking at here? The right to work on, right to
service act.
Right to Service Act, and you look that up and get more information about it. But check it out. I mean, it's something that you want to keep your eyes on if you're an enthusiast. And this is going to apply to motorcycles. It's going to apply to it could stretch over to the UTV market.
It is. They said that they're going to attack the ATV and the side-by-side market also. And something that a lot of people may not be considering right now, but this is just proof that people that are in industry don't come from industry. In other words, people that run a lot of industry now, not just the automobile industry, but the motorcycle industry, there's a lot of people that have never been in this industry before. They have no history in it. They're being brought in to make decisions on industry. What makes the power sports industry flourish is diversity and a freedom to do exactly what we're talking about here. Work on your own motorcycle, change your motorcycle, your ATV, your side-by-side, in a manner that reflects your tastes and your desires, okay?
Yeah.
Well, you take that away from this industry and it's gone and it's dead.
Well, and then what is it going to do to the racing components of that when you think about, guys that are road racing their motorcycles, flat track racing, either a modern, DTX bike or a vintage motorcycle, making performance enhancements there, drag racers. I mean, it's going to be a huge hit on everybody.
Yeah, I just saw a deal that was posted not just on Facebook, but YouTube has kind of had a media, internet media kind of frenzy. Is the same kind of problems that's happening to race cars that were started life as a production car.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of issue with that. So there's a lot of political special interest groups that to me have stepped way out of bounds and are trying to attack soft targets to get a feather in their cap. Mm-hmm. And I think that anybody that is an enthusiast out there of any kind, or racers of any kind, whether you just race on the weekends or you actually chase a local, regional, or national series, to get involved and to check out and see what your rights are and what your avenues are to express your opinions, and do so.
Yeah. Well, and we've had more bad news for the industry. In our last show, we talked about Victory Motorcycles, which is owned by Polaris, which also owns Indian Motorcycles, but they are shutting down, or by this time have shut down, the Victory brand. And then we find out over the course of the weekend that EBR, Eric Buell Racing,
has also closed their doors.
They're closing their doors as well. So the kind of American V-twin superbike that the Buell is known as being is going to be no more.
Yeah, Victory, to me, I don't think it's a very wise decision. Their claim is that they only had a small part of the market with their Victory motorcycle, and so they were going to close the doors. But if you look at the numbers, as far as profit goes on the motorcycles, they sold all that they could build. They admittedly said that they were struggling to manufacture more of those motorcycles, so there's not a surplus of those motorcycles, and the brand was profitable. To me, that is a huge mistake, and there's a lot of speculation about what could happen with that. And then with EBR, I hate to see that. That thing has come and gone and come and gone, and it's been one. It is not EBR's fault. It hasn't been Buell's fault, but it seems that just about the time that they try and get that brand going and they just almost get that brand stable, something knocks their feet out from underneath them and they don't have any of the resources to get past it, and so their doors close. And they've had some people come in and try and help back that brand, and to get it back off the ground again. But I hate to see any of the American marquees go down like that. We were just starting to get a foothold back in the power sports industry again inside the United States, and now it seems like that week after week we've got door closings.
Yeah, and they did, in the stories that I've read, I mean, they are searching for investors, or maybe just praying that investors will come to their rescue at this point, and maybe Eric Buell's kind of like the phoenix. He'll just rise out of the ashes again. He's done it before, but it'll be interesting to see what happens, if this will be the last of Eric Buell as a marquee.
I hope not. I've liked those motorcycles. A lot of people look at me strange when I say that I like those motorcycles, but I think that a lot of times people don't take into consideration the pure pleasure of what motorcycles have to offer. It's got to be a publicity thing with a lot of people, that if it's not the fastest production this, or the media doesn't hype it to be, if you don't have this, you're a nobody kind of thing. A person needs to set that aside and look at the pure enjoyment, because after all, it is a production street bike, okay? Right. And so, is it really fun to ride? Do you have a lot of support parts-wise with it, okay? Does it fit you well? Do you enjoy riding it? I think a lot of people have lost the pleasure of pure pleasure, simple pleasures of just riding something that stops good, turns good, handles good. And the Buell offered that. And there's not, well, for myself, of course not me, I've been accused of being a little picky when it comes to stuff. But I truly liked what Buell had to offer. And it was sort of my hopes that would be the United States kind of last stand to offer a performance production motorcycle in the industry.
Yeah. Well, and they were cool motorcycles, and I've not really seen many of the new ones, but some of the previous era motorcycles, they were just they were cool looking bike. They had a great sound to them, and they looked like they were a lot of fun to ride. And like you said, I think we often don't look at that. We all think we have to have the latest, greatest, or fastest thing out there, or whatever the marketing words that are being used to promote it, that we have to have that. But there are so many great motorcycles out there that offer a different feel, a different type of ride. Riding a Triumph is going to be different from riding a new Honda CBR completely. Sure. And you could enjoy both of those in different days, different aspects.
And a lot of times people pick motorcycles that after a while they don't like them. I've got customers that ride some late model superbike, okay, and we could go on and on with anything from GSXRs to Hayabusas to whatever. But in the long run, they don't like the motorcycle because they're not user friendly for them.
Right.
Okay. Now somebody else may have one and love it. I myself like a lot of the race replicas for the street, and I like a lot of the high performance specialty motorcycles for my particular taste in riding, but that's not for everyone. And I think people, whenever they take the time, because motorcycles are a sizable investment for the most part, new or used, that if you're going to spend that kind of money, take the time to see if you like it. And again, EBR actually had that across the board. They handled well, they stopped good, their riding positions were really, really nice. So again, I hate to see EBR go, but hopefully they'll have some investors and it'll come back.
Yeah. Well, we've seen a couple of new bike launches in the last couple of weeks as well, and Honda has come out with the all-new speaking of super bikes, the CBR 1000RR, and this is almost like the return of the famous Blackbird from the 80s, which I thought was a really cool motorcycle, but I mean, this thing looks mean.
It does. I liked a lot of the promo pictures, and I liked a lot of the stats on the motorcycle. So it'll be interesting to see how it does in the marketplace and to see how the public likes it.
Yeah. Now, I would suggest if you're a first-time rider, a CBR 1000 is not the bike that you want to run out and pick up just because it looks cool if you've never ridden a motorcycle before, because that could get you in a lot of trouble in a very quick amount of time.
Well, and again, that is where I'm sort of an advocate for a lot of the safety riding courses.
Yeah.
In the state of Oklahoma, you're actually required to have a motorcycle endorsement. You have to go through those programs. And actually, those programs offer a lot, even if you're a veteran street rider. They still offer a lot of information. And if you talk to a lot of people, not only police officers, representatives from insurance companies and stuff, even MSF instructors, all of them across the board will say that if people would just take the time to practice and implement the techniques that are taught in those classes, that a lot of the accidents would be greatly reduced.
Yeah.
So when you go buy a motorcycle, make sure that you buy one that's well within your experience range of ability, and take the time to check out one of the MSF safety courses close to you, and at least go talk to the instructors and see what they have to offer. And I think it would be well worth your time.
Yeah, and there are we're based in Oklahoma City, and so there's several around this area that are really good, and you can often even find, like the one that I went through was through a local police department that offered a safety riding course, and then you were able to get your certification, your M endorsement, by going through that course as well. But there's other several schools available. And so wherever you are, just Google it, and I'm sure you can find a good safety riding course. And even if an M endorsement isn't required in your state, it's always a good option to go out, and you can always pick up something new. I grew up riding motorcycles, but was on the dirt more often, and street bikes were kind of a new thing to me, and I learned some things during that course. And so it's always good. You can always learn more about your riding, and it's always good to just get a refresher on a lot of things.
It is, and even though that nobody will argue the fact that the dirt is the best place to start, period.
Yeah.
There's a lot of techniques and a lot of riding styles that you develop in the dirt that translate to street that gives you a huge advantage on the street. Nobody would dispute that. But there are a lot of techniques, and it's more of just techniques. There are a lot of awareness tools that a person needs to have when they ride on the street. And in these classes, they talk about that, how to read traffic and safety distances and things like that. So it's more than just the ego of I can ride a motorcycle. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. I don't know why I just thought about this. I started thinking about the Monster Energy video, the Dooney videos. If you've seen, Monster Energy does these videos called the Doonies, which are really cool if you like kind of free riding and some. But they incorporate everybody that they sponsor. But there's a couple of guys that are like stunt riders on Harleys,
yes.
And they had hit them out on the sand dunes on a couple of baggers. I couldn't tell if they put paddle tires on them or what. But I was thinking about street bikes on dirt. And
they had paddle tires on them, which was amazing that they didn't sink that plumb up to its handle grips. But have you seen the one where they have the big full dress, the big dresser with studs on it, and they have it on a frozen lake up around the Great Lakes area?
Oh, no, I don't know.
And
I've seen that.
trying to ride it like an ice racer. Or the factory F1 MotoGP bike that they put the studs in?
Oh, Mark Marquez, would they?
Yeah, where they run that thing in the ice.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. He's wild.
I liked it.
They also did, I think it's the Doonies 3 video where they have the Harley guys on baggers and they're like riding a wheelie down the highway because they do a whole thing with Kurt Busch, who's sponsored by Monster Energy, and he's driving his, now Monster Energy Cup car down this highway, chasing these guys to the desert, and then like the Harleys, the baggers are riding wheelies down them, which is
dragging the saddlebags.
Yeah, pretty impressive that's some impressive riding to be able to see that. Anyway, my mind went completely in another direction. One of the other new bikes that has come out recently is and I know you're going to laugh when I say this, the Ducati Scrambler Cafe Racer.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing, Ducati has their Scrambler motorcycle, which started out as a typical Scrambler, which is basically like a street bike that you can ride a little off-road. It's a very cool motorcycle. They've come out with different variations of it and different color schemes and different, they have some that have some bigger fenders on it. And what do they call it? Oh, the Urban Assault or something like that.
And the DT, which is supposedly their little dirt track replica.
Yeah, they have the DT, which is really cool, which looks like a flat track motorcycle. It's even got, basically number panels on the sides and everything. But now they have the Scrambler Cafe Racer, which...
To me, that's like saying, here is my motocross dresser.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an oxymoron in the naming, but they have developed the Scrambler as essentially a sub-brand of Ducati. So they are marketing it to a completely different segment. They have their own line of apparel. They have their own website. They do their own thing, and it's all separate from the standard Ducati named products. So I kind of get it. And it's a cool looking motorcycle. I mean, they've done a great job in the design of it. It is, uses the same tank as their typical Scrambler and everything, but has more of the clip-on style bars that drop down. And it's a cool looking bike.
It's a traditional cafe racer.
Yeah.
Triumph has the Thruxton R, okay?
Yeah.
Which is a little more aggressive than the Thruxton in of itself. All those being traditional clubman racers, which the slang term is like cafe racer, okay?
Because they used to ride in England, they would ride these bikes from cafe to cafe.
And cafe racer was actually a derogatory term because they said you're not a real racer, you're a cafe racer.
Yeah.
And so that has mutated into what we have today. But the Ducati is a very nice motorcycle. That I'm not too happy with the naming of the motorcycle, but nonetheless, in this day and age, you've got a lot of mix-mash branding, and people want to put a label on this and label on that. So, again, we're back to people that don't have any history in motorcycling, naming motorcycles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All of that aside, it's a very nice motorcycle. The stats on the motorcycle are impressive, and it would be well worth the time and effort to go check it out.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, we may have the opportunity to check it out. We're going to be going out to Eurotech very soon, as soon as we can get some really good weather. And we're going to be working with Eurotech in Oklahoma City and riding some of their bikes. Of course, if you've been listening to us or watching some of our stuff for a little while, you've seen us out at Iron Nation Harley-Davidson. We've ridden a couple of Harleys. If you want to find those, you can find them. We've got a YouTube page for the Powersports Podcast. You can also find those on our Facebook page. We got to ride one of the new Road Kings with the Milwaukee 8 in it, so you can watch that video and hear what we have to say about that. And we're going to be doing more of that here in our 2017 season. We're going to try to do a lot more riding videos as best we can, and we're just waiting for this wintertime thing to get past.
Yeah, I'm way past I'm ready for summer. I'm ready to ride some of these new motorcycles, and I think we have a large selection of motorcycles that we can ride now.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get to ride a Scrambler and maybe the Scrambler Cafe Racer, and plus a lot of other things. Of course, Eurotech in Oklahoma City has Ducati, Triumph, and BMW motorcycles, so we've got plenty to choose from, and we are going to have a whole lot of fun.
And if somebody's got any ideas about what they'd like to see us review, like us on Facebook, give us some input. Tell us what you'd like to see us ride.
Yeah, you can find us at Facebook. We have our Facebook page. Hopefully you're watching live right now. If you're listening to the podcast, then go to the Facebook page, like us. You can also find us on Instagram. We'll be doing more photos as we get out more and get around some more motorcycles and racing and that sort of thing. You can also find us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is at Powersports Talk. Of course, you can listen to the show and even find more extensive reviews and some pictures and things like that on our website, Oklahoma Talking Company. That's oklahomatalking.co. And then again, you can listen to the podcast there. You can hear us on SoundCloud, on iTunes, and on Stitcher Radio. But that's about all the time we have for today's show. We appreciate you tuning in, both on Facebook Live and if you're listening on one of the aforementioned outlets. But for Eric Colvin, I'm Jason Baffrey. Thanks for listening. We are out of here.